les petits producteurs qui, sur des hectares à 2 hectares chaque année, permettent de produire des volumes importants de cacao qui sont vendus à travers le monde. Dans l'Afrique de l'Ouest et l'Afrique centrale constituent les principaux producteurs avec de grandes parts sur le marché. Donc aujourd'hui, nous allons parler du développement des filières durables. Comment est-ce que ces filières peuvent contribuer à l'amélioration de la réduction de la déforestation? Comment est-ce que ces productions peuvent contribuer à l'amélioration du revenu des planteurs? Qu'est-ce qui est fait par les différents acteurs en vue de maintenir ces chaînes de valeur durables et optimiser les bénéfices pour les communautés? Donc, nous aurons 3 séquences pendant cet atelier. La première séquence va être introduite par Monsieur le ministre de l'Agriculture, de l'Élevage et des Pêches, de l'Alimentation du Gabon. Ensuite, nous aurons Madame Carla Montesi, responsable direction Green Deal and Digital Agenda, direction générale des partenariats internationaux à la Commission européenne, et le docteur Ismahan Elouafi, experte à la FAO. Donc, j'appelle sur le panel le ministre de l'Agriculture, de l'Élevage et des Pêches de la République gabonaise.
Merci, madame. J'ai donc la charge, n'est-ce pas, d'assurer l'ouverture de l'atelier sur l'agroforesterie et le revenu descend des producteurs, exemple des industries du café cacao. Je dois dire que notre pays, le Gabon, à proprement parler, n'a pas d'industrie, n'est-ce pas, dans le secteur café cacao. Mais nous sommes simplement en train d'essayer de relancer ce secteur. Mesdames, Messieurs, la politique agricole de notre pays s'inscrit dans le sillage de l'ambition de son Excellence Ali Bongo Ondimba, président de la République, chef de l'État, de faire du Gabon un pays pionnier dans le développement durable. D'une manière générale, l'on considère que l'agriculture du Gabon est peu développée. En ce sens, le pays importe près de 70% de ses produits alimentaires et que l'on assiste par ailleurs à un déclin de la filière café-cacao. En effet, la production de café et du cacao au Gabon connaît une baisse régulière depuis près d'une quarantaine d'années. Elle est passée pour le café de plus de 1000 tonnes dans les années 70 à moins de 100 tonnes en 2016, avec un faible rendement moyen de 308 kg à l'hectare. La situation est également similaire, n'est-ce pas, pour le cacao, dont la production est passée de près de 6010 tonnes dans les années 70 à environ 500 tonnes en 2015, avec de faibles rendements moyens de l'ordre de 453 kg à l'hectare. Cette situation n'est pas soutenable économiquement. Déficit commercial, tensions sur les réserves de change, etc. C'est pourquoi nous avons décidé donc d'inverser la tendance et de créer plus d'emplois dont on a besoin pour notre jeunesse. Le gouvernement de la République s'est donc fixé pour l'objectif global de réduire de 50% les importations alimentaires, de lancer la filière café-cacao. Il s'appuie pour cela sur un plan national d'affectation des terres qui assure un usage plus efficace des terres, une préservation de la forêt et des zones riches en biodiversité, conformément à nos engagements pris dans le cadre de la déclaration de Glasgow sur les forêts et l'utilisation des terres adoptée en 2021 à la COP26. À titre d'illustration, après des études écologiques, des enquêtes socio-économiques menées par la Commission technique du climat et des études d'impact environnemental,
Climate Commission, an area of 7,000 hectares was allocated to forest, whereas other areas for more than 1,000 hectares was dedicated to cocoa and coffee industry. In accordance with the Acceleration Transformation Plan, PAT, Gabon, in terms of agriculture, We are aiming at producing 3,000 tons by year 2025. To achieve this goal, Gabon launched the project of young entrepreneurs that has already allowed the setting up of 16,000 hectares, and the area should reach by 2025 1,000 hectares. In terms of technical support, the rule will be to set up good areas. That means that 30% of the trees will be kept, will not be destroyed. For more reliability, we will have interline fruits. For example, the use of these agroforestry techniques will allow to promote sustainable biodiversity conservation. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, Gabon has committed in the setting up of sustainable production to contribute to the preservation of our green area. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le
Thank you, distinguished minister. The EU has launched its new law on reducing deforestation in the agricultural value chains. And among the products, we have cocoa, which is one of the major products in Central Africa. So now I would like to invite Mrs. Kala to provide highlights.
Merci beaucoup. Permettez-moi.
Thank you very much. Allow me, distinguished participants and Minister, I would like to first congratulate you for organizing this Libreville meeting. Actually, the departing point is the experience and the initiatives taken on cocoa and coffee, taken with 3 major countries in West Africa, including Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Cameroon. Maintenant, je vais parler en anglais.
This initiative that we have called a flagship initiative, in reality is based on the organization of a multi-stakeholder process and an international partnership with these countries, including authorities, including industry, including civil society. And the point of the departure of this initiative, it was the decision from Ghana and the Côte d'Ivoire taken in 2019 on the adoption of the living income differential, the LEAD initiative, an agreement between Ghana and the Côte d'Ivoire, an agreement with the industry, on a price premium that is retroceded to farmers. So the initiative was launched on the basis of the decision to pay the farmers with a just price. Why we have taken this initiative with Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, and the Cameroon? Because, of course, the 3 together represent the bulk of the world cocoa production and are the main sources of trade of cocoa with the European Union. Starting the initiative on the LEAD, we have tried to bring together the 3 dimensions of the sustainability. The economic sustainability, pay a just price to the farmers, the environmental sustainability, and the social sustainability, how we ensure production that is child labor free. And the idea is we recognize that for a different product, for a product that is more sustainable from an environmental and a social point of view, we need a different price for the producer, more economic sustainability. So we really think the three elements that we're discussing here are clearly interlinked. Now, as I was requested, I will maybe focus a little more on the environmental sustainability, because as was mentioned by the moderator, the European Union has adopted in December last year a new EU regulation on deforestation-free products, regulation that will enter into force in 2024, most likely. This regulation will foresee that products that will have to be, can be imported in Europe has to be deforestation-free product. So we need to ensure that the product that will be imported in Europe are not linked with deforestation. In the implementation of this regulation require the setting up of traceability system that are national in coverage, has to be robust, credible in their methods, have to be accountable and transparent. And only when this traceability system accompanied with sustainability standards will allow the countries to demonstrate that their cocoa is free from deforestation and therefore justify an increased price in Europe. So this implies that this traceability system become a cornerstone of making environment but also the economic sustainability work for producer and the consumer. Now, of course, we intended to support the partner in creating, in putting in place, in setting this traceability system. And that is why producing countries as Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, but also Cameroon, are now in the process of developing and strengthening their own national traceability system for cocoa production. Such a system will need to integrate data collected by the private sector, and to expand behind the existing private traceability system to cover all the territory and all the supply chain. And with such a system, of course accompanied by the implementation of the African Standards on Sustainable Cocoa that is already exists, the IRS, producing countries are bringing themselves to the table the data that is essential to demonstrate that their production is compliant with the European Union requirement on deforestation, but also on labor market. So, what role we can play as European Union? Of course, support this multi-stakeholder dialogue between authorities, industry, civil society, farmers, that is key to understand all the process. And we are also supporting through our development cooperation the countries to building up this system and the standards. And of course also monitoring of forest and labor practice. And we are providing, for example, for Cote d'Ivoire, a program of 25 million for the Sustainable Cocoa Program, together with many member states in a Team Europe approach. We are reaching, I will say, good results, because thanks to also this development program and thanks to this dialogue that is taking place in the three countries, we are backing a solid trade policy dialogue, and we are supporting the piloting of this traceability system in Ghana, the production of land use maps in Cote d'Ivoire, and of course, we are starting with the national dialogue in Cameroon. So, we think that this process of sustainability, this process of a deepened dialogue, this process to create traceability system will be essential if we want to work for a sustainable chain in the different production. I stop here, and many, many thanks for all of you.
So thank you, Mrs. Carla Montesi. EU has done a lot in terms of regulation with traceability as the basis of the due diligence for cocoa and other products. There are several organizations working for the development of food and agriculture, and FAO is one of the main to work in this topic. So we'll really like Mrs. Dr. Ismahan Elwafi, Chief Scientist at FAO, to share with us how FAO is contributing to greening the agricultural sector.
Thank you very much. And let me start by really thanking you for the opportunity to bring in FAO as the UN organization for food and agriculture. And as you said, really, now that we are finally talking about things together instead of putting them in silos, agriculture, forestry, climate change, biodiversity, FAO is an organization that is mandated by the UN to do that, to manage all of them together, and to look particularly at trades-off and synergies. So when we talk about bringing more production, we might be talking about an environmental footprint. And that's where really I would like to draw your attention to our new strategic framework at FAO. The strategic framework, the new one from 2022 to 2031, and it has been approved by all your ministers, by the 994 members of FAO, emphasize transformation of agri-food system for efficiency, inclusiveness, resilience, and sustainability. And the way we are presenting it to make it easier for people to understand is that we want to go to 4 betters. We want to have a better production, a better nutrition, a better environment, because we can't do otherwise, and a better life. And in the life, it's the income of the farmers and the producers at large, foresters, fishers. And within this new strategic framework, I am the chief scientist that was brought on board for this new strategic framework, because we understand that if we want to get these 4 betters, if we want to deal with trades-off and with synergies, and increase the synergies and deal with the trades-off properly, we need science, technology, and innovation, and we need data, and we need to understand better the complexity of nature. Nature, it's not easy, it's complex, but we do have the know-how to really understand and make a plus-plus and a win-win. And within that, I think the cocoa and the coffee and the cocoa are very much linked to deforestation. And that's really where agroforestry as a methodology could help us. Agroforestry in countries that, like, as you mentioned, Mr. the Minister, in Gabon, you have reduced dramatically your production. But as you are going back to produce more because you need it, because your population needs it, your economy needs it, agroforestry could be a methodology to do that, to increase productivity and generate diversification, because we don't talk much about, we talk about loss, we don't talk about generation. So basically agriculture as a system, particularly agroforestry, does generate diversification, and that's increase biodiversity in the system where they are. And within that, what we have to keep in mind is really that the agroforestry can work economically, but it needs market access and decent producer income for the producers. And Carla, you mentioned it really, and that's, I'm very happy that the AU project is addressing very clearly that point. Right now, the market, and we heard it again this morning in the financial discussion, whereby the carbon price per se is very low, but also the price of certain produce, and this is not only the cocoa and the coffee, but many, many producers, produce of agriculture are not given the right price. So one of the main challenges in the production of coffee and cocoa is that the farmer do not have control over the prices for raw material unless specially product and can ask for a premium price like organic or sustainable or other certification. Smallholder farmers are vulnerable to market fluctuation and price volatility. And also diversification is key. And that's where the hats that FAO really play a role in, it's how we bring policy coherence around that. If we are talking about increasing income for farmers, how could we put the right subsidies? How could we put the right policies, the right export and import regulation? How could we really have a coherence that allow us really to increase the income of the farmers and increase production sustainably? The other area that is very important that we need to look at in terms of policies, how could we divert the policies to be much more pro-nature, pro-carbon sequestration, pro-farmers? And this pro is really very strong. But definitely, that's again another area where FAO with its large information and data could really help showcase where did it work and where did it not work and why it did not work. In terms of project and where we have been really influencing, the project with the AU, we are involved in it, and it's a very good example of how a project looking at 3 countries really can change the whole value chain toward more sustainability, but with more realism in terms of productivity and in terms of incentivizing the farmers and increasing their income. We have another project with GCF that will implement zero deforestation agroforestry models in southern region of Côte d'Ivoire to reduce emission. And we have also the most important, I think, that will really benefit all countries is that FAO is co-leading the Forest Data Partnership that aims to strengthen collaboration and application around global monitoring of commodity-driven deforestation, forest degradation, and restoration efforts across the globe. And maybe before I close, I think really we are in the basin of Congo, and this is one of the most important forests in the world. I do believe very strongly in the hotspot idea, whereby there are only certain regions in the world where when you intervene and invest, you have much more outcome and much more impact. And the basin of Congo is one of them. The Amazon will be the other very big one, and that's why these 2 ecosystems and these 2 regions require really a lot of investment. A lot of investment in terms of protection, a lot of investment in terms of putting it on the right path of really a sustainable value chain that really, I insist again, bring enough revenues to the farmers. Otherwise, the farmers would not have enough incentives to continue that sustainability path. So to close, simultaneously achieving deforestation-free supply chain and ensuring living income for producers of coffee and cacao specifically, it's not only possible, it is necessary, and it is a complementary objective. And FAO really in this fora would like really to commit again to our support to the countries and to the actors along the value chain that we're going to support you with technical advisory services, with policy as well as putting in place the right investment plan that really allows you to understand very well the trades-off, take them in consideration in your policies, in your regulation, in your financing and investment plan, but also understanding the synergies and pushing them, because I think it is possible once we take all the players and all the different variables together. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. For this phase, pour cette première partie,
For this first phase, you had the introduction statements by the Minister of Agriculture of Gabon. You talked about the national plan and the land use allocation. You also talk about the production of cocoa and coffee production. Mrs. Clara talked about the EU support and the desire to contribute to higher value chains and with traceability, and whereas FAO focused on agroforestry as a means to improve productivity and also the producers' income. Thank you for this first phase. Please kindly go back to your seat.
Okay, nous allons passer.
Now we are going to listen to the second speakers, and I'm going to call the speakers, including Mr. Fabien Dumay. Will you come here? Who is the degree of the university and the director of human resources of the group, Tutan Group. KUKA is involved in cocoa and coffee production in Central and West Africa. We also call Mrs. Violet, who is a political scientist, expert sustainable development, expert and director of social and environmental projects at Bija. Bija is a basket with still for an Amazonian. We also have Mr. Omer Malidi, who is the executive secretary of the Interprofessional of Cocoa and Coffee at Cameroon. He has been involved in the cocoa and coffee for 35 years and also involved in many structuring cocoa and cocoa structure. We also have Mr. Masada Otomo, who is the chairperson of the Cultural Association, specializing in the certification of cocoa and cocoa in Cameroon, which is one of the associations involved in the sustainable cocoa production, which includes about 1,200 planters, and also in sustainable culture since 2018. We also have Mrs. Nyange, who is the founder of the first chocolate industry in Gabon, I mean Chocolat de Julie, set up in here 2006, and which selects and process carefully these with local forest and with the ingredients linked to forest. Thank you for having accepted to attend this panel. We are going to talk about the industry development and forest development and forest preservation. My first question goes to Amaya Maradi. To which extent is cocoa industry contribute to forest preservation? Thank you, Nadej. I think you would better ask, it's good to ask this question here because for a few years, cocoa production is as the major cause of deforestation in Africa, which is true. It's true in West Africa, in Ecuador. And the third leading cocoa producing countries are practicing cocoa monoculture. They planted the cocoa, so deforestation is effective. But cultural practices are really different here in Central Africa. We don't destroy the whole forest for cocoa and coffee industry. I'm very happy because the minister talked about in a cocoa culture project in Gabon. Actually, Gabon, Congo, DRC, Cameroon, which are the major cocoa producing countries and also coffee in Central Africa, we have former ancestral practices which are completely different from what is done in West Africa. We are doing what is called agroforestry, and our cocoa is based on agroforestry. Does it preserve the forest? I'm not a scientist. I'm going to give you the last CIRAD report, which is a reference report, which dates back from to December 2022. The cocoa agroforest maintained many trees of hectares and with higher diversity of vegetal species and usage, polyvalent usage. The complex forestry agro-system facilitate some ecosystemic values such as forestry or carbon stockage, while allowing the supply of non-aligned products and also the maintain of sustainable cocoa production. I've talked about the experts, and to answer to your question, in Central Africa, actually, in our Congo Basin, cocoa industry does not destroy forest. It rather preserve the forest. This is what you should have in your mind. Keep in your mind. Because the fact of thinking that there is a destroyed forest and the forest, I think we have to maybe maybe yes in West Africa, but not in Central Africa. Our cultural practices preserve the forest indeed. Maybe we will have the opportunity to be highlights, and we have been talking about this since this morning, I think. But I think I will have the opportunity to come back to this with more details. Thank you. Now we're going to talk. Now we're going to we are now going to talk to cooperative planter. Your association includes more than 1,200 producers engaged in sustainable cocoa industry. How do you manage to how do you make sure that the cocoa which comes to the association is not does not come from protected areas? Thank you. I'm a chairperson of a corporation and also producer, because we need to be a producer to become a president of the association. I'm equally a chairperson of the cooperative. I have experience, ground experience as producers and at the level of the cooperative, of the association, with some intermediaries who purchase cocoa. I would say, as Malady said, deforestation in our area is not as complex as it is elsewhere. There is a deforestation, I know, but we need to know first the cause, the major causes. When you heard about these and we went to the ground,
and the actors who are involved, who have direct bond with the forest, which means that the prices of the land. So we have we noticed that it exists, but not. But the reason is very simple. We have noticed the poverty and unemployment of the young people. I mean, there are so many young people who have nothing to do. They are committed to doing anything because there's no job, and the poverty is buffeting them. And people are trying to find anything to do. So there's this problem, gangraining our societies. Now, regarding the solutions, we have started doing some awareness because we have to get the authorities to be aware of what is happening, the risks and the damages being caused. So we organize so many seminaries and meetings in order to raise awareness, and from there we have started producing plantains, because if there are threats regarding the forest, then there's definitely something that we need to do. So by ignorance, it is very important, you know, to know how to manage these this land use. We have what we call the integral spaces, which means that the actors, these are people who are working on the grounds in order to see at each hectare of plantation that they would like to know if we can find 1,000 to 1,000, you know, feet of cocoa so that the yielding can be higher. So if yes, I think it's a good news. Otherwise, we can get the planter, you know, to cover his cacao ground for a minimum yielding of 100 to a ton hectare when it is very well treated and very well followed with the good agricultural practices. So if the planter has noticed that there is an improvement on the area where he is working, then he doesn't have to broaden it. He can just stop there, and everything is all right. So this is, and moreover, we have started codifying the plantain in order to make sure that this is just for the traceability, because it's just to make sure that we have the species which are, you know, which are very well organized, and we have to make sure that the follow-up is happening very well. So on those three aspects that I mentioned, I mean the good agricultural practices, which will permit us to come with a good yielding, and it will give an opportunity to the planter, you know, to take good advantage of what he's doing. So all these are what I call good practices. Well, thank you very much. Now, the emphasis at your level is put on the causes, I mean the causes of the deforestation, being able to maintain the planters in the spaces which are already acquired in a way of increasing the activity in order to identify the existing planters and then come with good agricultural practices. Okay, now let me just go back now to Mrs. Julie Ambiel, who is the founder of the Chocolate of Julie. So tell us, please, you are a young Gabonese entrepreneur, so you came with cocoa plantations in order to back up the production of chocolate. Please tell us how you are proceeding and how you are living from raw material to processing in order to reduce the degradation of the forest as well. Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me tell you that we are in what we can call the secondary forest. So we are in a secondary forest. So there we can find so many, you know, materials. Yeah, we can find so many products that we can use to make palm oil, and then we can remove some palm trees in order to be able to plant cocos. And because these materials are not very easy to use, so we also have the opportunity to plant other trees like fruit trees, red fruits, which today are 7 years old. We've had the first production last year, so these are trees which produce per year. I mean, from June to the next June, or from August to the next August. So these are trees which have red fruits, and the fruits are very small. And after counting, we have up to 200 trees which have, you know, 7 years. So we've done the experience, and these are fruits that we can sell in the market. It's coming from the primary forest, and the villagers were saying that you know, it's going to yield in 30 years, in 40 years. But we were able to do the experience, and they were able to yield in just 7 years. And today we have great trees of 7 years which are producing fruits, red fruits, and we are being able to process them. So we are still planting so many fruits like, so many fruit trees. We have 300 different species, which I do not have the names in French, but in my local language, of course, I do know them. So these are the trees that we are planting in association with the cocoa. So we replant trees in the second forest, in the secondary forest, and great trees are still there, but we never touch them.
So then you're telling us that for the creation of young cocoa trees, the first thing is to stay at the secondary forest, which means forests that have already been submitted to forest degradation, where some trees were removed, where you stay with young trees like the parasol tree, which comes after forest exploitation, where many trees have been removed, and then you do efforts to maintain those young trees, and after to improve the number of trees, putting up accent to fruit trees that can generate more revenues and improve nutrition of local communities. I'll now turn back to Doctor. You are involved in cocoa area because you are buying cocoa in Central and West Africa, but the issue here is to know how do you demonstrate concretely your commitment to the the value chain. What do you do at your level to make sure that the what you buy are not coming from protected forest? Good morning and thank you. The issue is very complex, and to add to what was said before, agriculture is sometimes seen as a vector of climate issues, but at times we are a trade actor. We have been selling and buying cocoa for long, and this commitment we took 15 years ago, starting with cocoa, very recently coffee. We have decided to implement sustainability services, and generally sustainability is not is different from deforestation, which is an element of sustainable development. Your question is very good because we talk of impact measures today. When you implement all these projects, you commit funds, finance many things. How do we proceed? For 3 years today, we have reached a point where we deal with technology, where we can do satellite observation with the companies we are working with to see how we can see what these companies are doing. This is a first step towards identification of these deforested areas. Of course, we also rely on certifications offices, which we all know well, and today this is it's a figure, but these are areas where we are working with directly in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. 100% of this volume were directly submitted to direct certification of Deep Forest Alliance, which represent 160,000 acres, which is an element, but it's not enough. Today we have succeeded since 3 years to do a mapping of these producers in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. These figures seem to be enormous, but it's nothing compared to the total of number of farmers that can benefit from that. We have to continue this work. So we need an action plan to be able to regenerate these soils, to be able to trade these sustainable elements in protected area. There's a bundle of solutions that exist. We have to work hand in hand with a French initiative for sustainable coffee. Of course, we are committed and to this work, and we also take into account the issue of deforestation, which have been imported. These are commitments. All these are potential solutions, but not concrete actions. So today I'm talking to you as in my capacity of the Director of Human Resources. This is because we consider this path we have taken for 3 years today. We consider that innovation is also a solution to regeneration and climate change, because we are talking of climate emergency, so there's an emergency. We have to be able to react when we talk of this material. We have scientific material work that have been done with scientific services, which exists for a long time, but which we cannot deploy today on the ground. So we made the choice to turn and choose strong partnerships uh, that are startups, and today we are very proud to be able to work and have the first results with these different startups. We have Net Zero, which generates the tropical biomass, which can enable to be able to improve the production and generate financings to for carbon. We are also working with HDR, which is also present in Cote d'Ivoire. We had a prototype which is very precise. We have 20% of the cocoa area, which there we have the possibility of having reliable figures. We are working with Inarix, which is also present in Cote d'Ivoire. Later, I imagine that we will be able to work with other organizations. And when we say we can go very fast, we started discussions on December, and today we can see the results. So now we are talking of coffee, but we can also talk of artificial intelligence. We have traceability when we can track, then you know if we are in a protected area or not. Now I want to move to another subject, which is the co-founding against the risk of floods or drought. And I know I'm not answering your question directly, but I know that if we are here, it's thanks to certification. This is the best answer we can have today to find that our goods are not coming from protected areas, protected forests. So today we can work very fast in these issues. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we can note that geolocalization and mapping enable you to know whether the plantations are in forbidden areas or not. This is the first step, but that's not enough. So once we have identified and mapped, do the mapping, we also have social inquiries, surveys to do that. What we have been working on for 15 years today is bearing fruit or not. So commitment is very important. This is the first step, but measurement is also the second step. It seems easy when we just speaking, talking about it, sitting on a chair. Yes, 130,000 farmers is a step, but it's not enough. So the cocoa sector, which has already implemented some measures, be it at the level of creation of new plantations or at the level of the big companies for cocoa. When talking of deforestation, in line with deforestation, we don't have only cocoa and coffee. We have also rubber, which was introduced by the end of the process on the European law against deforestation, because rubber is also seen as an agent that contributes to deforestation. So at your level, what do you do for this issue? Thank you. Good morning. At the level of Asia, what I will ask you is to go to Amazonia. We go to Brazil, so we are going very, very far from the Congo Basin. That is region I already know. We are a French company. I think a brand, a shoe, brand of shoes, mark of shoe that was founded 20 years ago by two French people, but the company was created in Brazil. Why Brazil? Because we have wild rubber. We also have cotton, wool that is also produced by local farmers. So all these material can be found in the south of the country. So we want to make sure that these products are not coming from deforestation areas. So for Brazil, Brazil is also a country that enable to gather all our primary material and also reach to the final product, which is the pair of shoes. So unfortunately, what we can find in the style fashion industry, we have also entertainment. So against what we are what we are doing. We invite people just to do our shoes, to produce our shoes. We are, which is standard, which is very high compared to what is done in classical countries. Uh, Dealing with fashion. Why am I talking all of this? What is the link with cocoa, coffee, or Congo Basin? But in fact, all this was created by, 20 years ago. Vesha, that is to propose an alternative to fashion, sustainable fashion that can work economically. Of course, we know we are all looking for money, but also in area of social justice, in also environment. And I'm very delighted that FAO has insisted on the issue of farmers' revenues. You know, many environmentalists have fought for justice. One of these was assassinated, and he was also telling us, I'll translate from Brazilian, from Portuguese. He was saying that ecology without social justice is just farming. I like this saying. They say, but when you talk of forest, you also have to deal with people who are living in the forest, because people are living there. Um, the forest is not empty without any human activity. So for Veja, we are working with wild rubber, which means that it's not a rubber tree being planted, but we have these trees which you can find at the forest. Let's say we have one rubber tree per hectare, per acre, on a difference, different from cocoa. When we talk of Amazonia, notably with for the production of wild rubber, now we are talking of regions. One of the region which is one of the most area where the majority of people being poor, we have 1 to 700 acres in terms of control, monitoring. We are in areas which are very difficult to verify or to track, even for the government, when they have the will. What will enable us working with this rubber to work with this thing? I want to say that rubber is this a tree. Rubber, we have rubber without cutting the forest, so we just cut the trunk of the tree, and then we can receive the rubber. When we give an economic value to this tree, knowing that it's in an hectare of forest, we give economic value to these forests just with one tree. With the generation of this revenue for the rubber farmers, we contribute to preserve the preservation of the forest, and we know that competition is very rude. We have the increase of the price of meat in Brazil when we compare with the activities of cocoa. The fight is very tough, even for the price. So how do we proceed? Sorry, because I'm very passionate by this issue. We have to pay the producers. Since 2018, we have developed a kind of innovation. So we pay the families, the farmers of rubber. We talk of social and environmental services. We give them a price for each kilogram. We pay 12 Brazilian reais. We have the rubber value, which is bigger than if we had to pay normal rubber, and 150 for the social and environmental service. So for 12, we have 160% of the price that we pay, and is dedicated to paying the preservation of Amazonian forest. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful speech. and thank you for coming on the revenues of the producers. Well, let me get back to cocoa. With SOCAM, it's same. So what are the advantages? What is the comparative advantage that you can find for the markets for your certified products in terms of volume, of price, or revenue for the planters as well as the cooperative? Thank you very much. Honestly, apart from the increase of the production per hectare and the planters, there's no great income. We have serious problems on the market, and because you know that it has a cost. In order to get committed in the situation, you need to pay the price, and there's no return. You see, if today there's no an added value on the price in kilogram, I mean the cocoa is sold at the same price with the finished product, so it's difficult to understand. Because if you look at it, you know, I remember I produced 2,000 tons of cocoa, and I'm still not able to sell them. Last year, Ferroro has taken 500 tons out of the 2,000 tons. What about the 1,500 tons? What am I going to do with that? And that company has even closed now. They do not exist anymore. Now it is Valona from France which has taken 100 tons out of the 2,000 tons. And now we still have 1,800 tons remaining. So there's no prime, but the charges are still there. We are still paying so many charges for it. And as you know about it, we are up to 5 million every year, because every year you need to renew the certification. Because every year you definitely need to renew the certification, and the charges are high, and the machine is not open. I was even thinking that it's a matter of, you know, multinational. So we who are directly linked to the forest, there is absolutely no progress. So we have taken some commitments, talking with the farmers, but still we do not have the solution. So I'm just going to launch this call that they have to reformalize the price of the certified cocoa. It shouldn't be the same price with the non-certified. And how much is the price? So it's only 4 francs, and the farmers are discouraged. So I think apart from that increase of the production, I can't see any other advantage, you know. So we have a problem, but we have to be able to sell. That's the problem. So people just want to buy it ordinarily, just like that. But we are also asked to certify the price of the production. So if I understand well, in SOCAM CMC, the commitment in the certification has permitted you to increase the volume. Is that what you're saying? So is it a double? No, not necessarily. It's not something that just comes like that. I mean, it's been moving gradually, because, you know, there are some of the farmers who, for example, decide to go for 400 kgs. So which means that, yes, there's been a progress, but it's a very small progress. So you've been able to kind of double the productivity of the cocoa plantations because of your commitment in the sustainability. So you have been able, you have a certified volume, which is the total volume produced by the plantations, but the market that permits you out of the productivity, the market that permits you to have a premium to the production, is still having a lot of problems. So you are telling us here that the access of the market for the products here is a little bit complicated, and there are so many efforts to be done in that vein. So in terms of market for the certified products, there are so many efforts to be done. If I go back to the cocoa planters, cocoa farmers of Julie, how are you going to tackle the issue of diversifying the revenues, the incomes? Thank you very much. First of all, let me tell you that we have our own cocoa. So we produce, we process our cocoa, and then we have our farmers who are in charge of that, and we too. But we also have farmers with whom we go to, to whom we go to buy the cocoa, and they are very experimented people who've been in the business for a long time. And also we go there we go to some farmers to take the cocoa, which has been of a great help to us. It also assists us in the development of the of the plants, the seeds, and then the contribution of the villagers. So we buy with the cocoa cashier. We also buy from the villagers. We also have our own plantations, which supply us in order to do the processing of the cocoa. So we do not buy from the cocoa cashier, and then the cashier buys from the villagers, and then we are able to feed a lot of families. We are able to feed a lot of families in our environment. I also wanted to, we also buy groundnuts, ginger, ananas, pineapple. And on the market, we go there to buy. We have special suppliers and special buyers, and we directly supply in the market, and some of them are coming to supply us in our, in our workplaces. So we are about 20 people working in that domain, and then we are able to feed a lot of families, and that's our pride, and that's the whole reason why we are proud of ourselves. Well, also, we can also talk here about some incomes. Let's talk about those people who are supplying you for the flavors of a very delicious chocolate. Let me go back to town, because Marceline has been saying right now that they have difficulties, to sell all the volumes of certified products, and that's the case in Cameroon, and maybe it's also the case in other countries, for example, in Cote d'Ivoire or in Ghana, or those countries where you've been working in. So my question is this: how have you been doing, or what are the mechanisms that you people are using to make sure that the incomes linked to your commitment in the sustainability get to the farmers? Well, the majority of our volumes are analyzed in Ghana and in Cote d'Ivoire, and we are in the frame of a regular market where we address directly the farmers. So the best thing is, the question is, what are the actions of sustainability achieved by us? So let me answer to that. It's just the payment of a premium, which is about $70, which is added to the price. So it's the implementation of the services or agroforestry services and access to micro credit, which we are offering on the ground. But also, we do not distribute directly. This premium is not distributed directly. So what do we do to make sure that everything is working? What is the impact? So we go through checking, because in what we are putting in place, be it we or the others, and what do we engage as human or financial material? What is the time that we dedicate in doing that, and how does it work? So it's a group of 800 people, all of us, including our grounds, our field workers. So it takes a lot of time, and then it takes a lot of energy and a lot of work. But we just make sure that it works, and that's the most important. So it is through those social and economic surveys that we are carrying out all the activities, and we collect data, social economic data, by sending enumerators nearby the farmers, their families, in order to see how their practices are moving forward and how their life standard is improving, and see the impacts that all this is having on their lives, and tomorrow coming with new and fantastic programs to be subsidized. And I would like to answer to your question, because we are not directly actors of the distribution of the supply. What we are doing is that we just make sure that it works, because if it doesn't work, we have to change our way of doing things. But we are not very far from the mechanism which has been presented by the people. So if I listen to you very well, be it in Tutan or Sensei, so producing in the agricultural sector by avoiding deforestation, coming with some requirements in terms of sustainable agriculture has a price, and the price has to be paid. And all this is found in the application of the new regulation of the European Union. Let me get back to Mr. Maledi in CICC. Okay, this policy, of course, what do you perceive as the challenges, as being the challenges to which the cocoa farmers in Cameroon are supposed to be facing in order not to lose the markets of the European Union, and also in order for them to be able to, to stem the prices. So there's definitely this system that you have that demonstrates that you have been doing well.
Thank you.
D'alarme qui a été lancé par notre ami. En fait, c'est une situation qu'on trouve partout. Toutes les coopératives qui ont une certification indépendante ont ce problème, n'arrivent pas à vendre leurs produits. En fait, la stratégie des multinationales, je n'ai rien contre Touton, hein. La stratégie des multinationales, c'est de leur être affiliés, parce que c'est eux qui payent tous les frais des audits de certification et ils vous prennent votre produit.
The multinational strategy normally is to pay, to be affiliated to them. We will see later how we can work together. Olivier Fezot can provide more details of actually for multinational strategies, you have to be affiliated to them. I come back now to your question. In Cameroon, this is what we did. With our friends involved in the chocolate industry, we reviewed thoroughly what is called sustainability in coffee and the cocoa industry. We reviewed everything, starting by the producer. You see, when we'll show an image of a producer, it's just someone like me, an old man. And I'm 65 years old, for example. Now we have set up a program called New Generation, whereby we get young people involved in culture, in cocoa and coffee industry, and we provide support for them to have each 3 hectares of that. What they'll have to provide is land. And the work, we don't support financially, but we provide monitoring. We have many things. And we give them hectares, and we continue to provide materials for 2 or 3 years for effective plantations. And at the end, these young people are in the villages, and they create the development pool, and they create association, and sustainability continue in the fact that we teach them good practices. They are doing selective destroyment, and they monitor the plantations in accordance with more precise standards. And in terms of sustainability, they improve the quality of cocoa. They produce cocoa, which is called cocoa of excellence, which is the top of cocoa quality, and this continues. And the third aspect of sustainability, which is mostly not taken into account by our partners, is the price, the economic aspect. As part of what we are doing with chocolate industries engaged, they pay 2.70 euros per kilo in cocoa in Cameroon. Win 1,400 kilo in Cameroon, and this is perfect. Nowadays, when we talk about the future in relation to the European regulation, I have some. I'm disappointed because Carla is already gone, but I'm going to talk to My question is to FAO and maybe to the European Commission. In France, the French corporation, FCD, for example, French initiative for sustainable cocoa, actually, the European regulation is a hitch for us. It's a kind of injustice for people in Central Africa, for people involved in the cocoa industry. It's a kind of injustice on 2 points. First, we have the impression that this regulation is or hampers deforestation, because according to this regulation, all damage, the whole year is good. We valid, we approve. This means all those people involved in deforestation, even in Ecuador, in Asia, they have everything. They have destroyed everything until the whole year. This is eligible to cocoa and coffee. And those who are not involved, and those who are not involved in the forest deforestation, just like we people involved in deforestation, we have preserved at the end of the year, and if we add 1 meter square of agroforestry, because in the definition given by the new regulation, agroforestry is not forest, it's a degradation of forest. This means we are wise because we preserved our forest successfully, and products, there is limitation, and it's a kind of injustice. Actually, those who are involved in forestry have a premium. I think we could have deforested, because when I compare the area, the surface area of DRC and Cote d'Ivoire, DRC is a Cote d'Ivoire 6 times. Why is it important when I say it? It is important because chocolate consumption grows constantly by 3% each year. If chocolate consumption grows by 3%, this means that as a consequence, the demand in cocoa will grow as much. The people will say, for example, to fill the gap of demand, the production should increase. How? We are going to focus on yield. And for people with less surface area, they will have not enough. What happens? Those with great eligible areas will continue to provide cocoa. This is what is called Yalta. Actually, according to the European regulation today, set up cocoa Yalta, because in the long term, this will not be visible immediately, because the long time, those who have destroyed savagely their forest will have the right to supply cocoa. No. We should not, you Europeans should not impose us. You have swallowed cocoa industry. Why? Why we Africans can't grow our surface areas? When you talk about the area, this is what we talk about area. This does not include the price. Today, in our countries, we don't, all our cocoa is sold in the market, but the price, please, but the problem, the price is for you said that the people considered as deforestation. Instead, it should be considered as a forest preservation. This is what I wanted to bring as highlight. Thank you, Mr. Malidi. So, this is the end of the second phase, which in which we talk about rubber industry and the cocoa and coffee industry. Now I'm going to invite Mrs. Distinguished Minister of Forestry Economy of Congo, also the Minister of Fishery and Rural Development of Chad is around. We're going to start with the Minister of Environment, Fishery and Sustainable Development of Chad. Kindly, distinguished Minister, share with us the various measures taken in charge to facilitate the development of agroforestry in terms of the preservation of natural spaces in Chad. Thank you. I want to apologize first because I've just arrived in the meeting room. I did not follow exactly. I don't know exactly what's happens in this panel. However, I will say a few words on the situation in Chad. Actually, I followed the last presentation done by my brother on the cocoa industry. Cocoa is something which is good in large forest countries, and in the Chad, the situation is a bit different because we are a bit in an intermediary between the wet tropical area and the southern Sahelian area. Maybe the issue in Chad is a bit different from other countries. Most of the largest part of our country, actually, we are trying to restore degraded land because by we for almost 40 years we have undergone security problems, so that we have lost much farmland. And in most countries, we talk about land conservation, whereas we are trying to restore our degraded land. This degradation was, in addition to this degradation, there was a rural exodus, movement of people, migration of people, because due to our climate, there was naturally people move a lot from north to the south, but due to climate change, these migration movements have increased. But the noble population were obliged to go to the other side of the Ubangisha River, and in the forest this was intense. And now about the Chad's plan to get to improve the situation in Chad. We are trying to promote sustainable development, and the population in Chad has increased 3 times, and then there is a possibility to use land for farming, and we have to increase protected areas. And how can we develop in compliance with international standards by increasing the protected areas? Actually, Chad is considered as the most vulnerable people in terms of climate change. But unlike this situation, we enjoy less international financing dedicated to climate change, dedicated to the fight against climate change. That's why maybe with our own resources, we are trying to in wet areas. Moreover, thanks to Chad, there is a kind of closing wall because more than 50% of our country is a desert, and it's almost 3 or 4 kilometers. That's why our national plan, according to our national plan, we need the contribution from the international community for capacity building of land use, which is a bit degraded and less degraded in the south, but more in the north. So Chad, the situation in Chad now is that we need resources needs and also capacity building for restoration, for land restoration, and also for agricultural development, so that we can make up for lost time marked by insecurity in our country. In addition, I would like to avail this opportunity to talk about the need for all partners' involvement to save the Lake Chad. Lake Chad actually has lost almost 90% of its surface area for the last 40 years. In this area, we have nearly 30 and 35 million populations. On the 25,000 areas, now we have now 2,000 meter square, which is disappearing. And now you can imagine the damage. I think it's in a very important farming area for our country. So excuse me, because I did not prepare my statements. I just came, and I was not aware. I didn't know that I was going to take the floor during this workshop. You talked about the advancement of desert and the need for support. Before I give the floor to the Minister of Forestry Economy, you're kindly invited to watch a video on the African and global decade for deforestation, which is very important. Can we have the video now, please? It's a 2-minute. It will last 2 minutes. And then we have statements by the minister.
Assurer le renouvellement et la perpétuation de la flore. Ce n'est pas tout. en 2000.
And in 2011, the promoting tools has been put in place, naming the program of replantation, may it be in local or international sphere. But the question of land management has always been at the core of the head of state. In 2002, during the Congress, it was also dealt. In 2023, during
Sharm el-Sheikh en Égypte. Ici, Denis Sassou Nguesso a donné le rythme et la cadence appelant à la décennie mondiale d'afforestation pour sauver la planète d'un péril collectif.
Je lance du haut de cette tribune l'appel solennel à l'instauration d'une décennie de l'afforestation qui obligerait l'humanité à inverser le cours actuel de destruction de nos forêts.
Le 18 février 2023, cette initiative a été validée par l'Union africaine sous la dénomination Décennie africaine et mondiale de la forestation. La décennie africaine et mondiale de la forestation, la planche de salut d'une humanité qui soupire et aspire à sa restauration. La décennie africaine et mondiale de la forestation, une invite de Denis Sassou Nguesso au monde entier pour adopter une solution basée sur la nature et ainsi lutter contre les changements climatiques. Située en Afrique centrale, la République du Congo est un pays à vocation forestière.
On peut arrêter la vidéo, s'il vous plaît.
Okay, let's stop the video. Minister, can you please tell us more about the contribution of the DRC on the contribution of forest and restoration? Thank you very much, Speaker. I would like to commend you for the different panels that you are entertaining. We learned a lot, and I want to thank panelist members for the different problems that they are dealing with. And I would like to say that we decided to choose the way of agroforestry to look for two reasons. The first reason is that households in Africa are still using firewood for energies, and it comes from natural forest. The second reason is that selling this firewood is an income-generating resource for community. And the third reason is that we thought that the agriculture system can bring solution to those problematics or problems, meaning that we can plant trees to fill the big cities with firewood, at the same time ensure incomes for communities that are used to sell or selling coal. So for these trees, maybe we are used to using the acacia that has the azote product. So meaning that we can plant living cultures such as cassava and yam. So Congo has chosen those points in 2010, where we launched this replanting for project, and then we are intending to increase. So this plan has two categories. The first one is 70% lead to industrial or private plantations, meaning that we are giving or we are providing with private partners some reserves that they can come and invest with many objectives. May it be for wood, it may be wood energy, it can be carbon storage, or the selling of credit carbon. The second one may related to plantations and the forestation and plan program has intended to plant 20% within 2010 or in 10 years. The last one or the last percentage is for local communities, and I want
want to add that in those plantations, we are taking into account cacao, coffee, oil, palm, rubber, and the like. Apart from those different, the other species. So we are also using Blamarati in French for the braid seeds. So we have a lot of products inside the plantations, and the agroforestry system take into account the production of honey, of oil. It is what we call a circular economy, with the community interested in plantations. And I also want to say even industrials that came for private farms have the right to book a surface for the activity. I may take the example of a contract that we have with Total Energy for COT. They have a given land that is reserved for agro-industry. So this is an invitation to all African countries, the global countries, to celebrate during the World Wood Day, and we may accelerate the different programs that we have in our countries. Thank you. Thank you, Minister, for this interesting experience that you have in Congo as part of community implication, commitment of the states in the diversification of different species. I want to invite the Minister of Environment to come to the stage for the closing remark.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, by giving me the floor. We have well followed different insight and sharing of ideas coming out from this panel with a careful observation, attention. We find it rich of knowledge. If I can start, by the way, by congratulating and thank the panelists who pave the way with the subjects related to the practices of agroforestry with the different benefits, whether in ecosystemic components or especially for increasing the biodiversity trend, and also the fight against all the climate change hazards, and even different benefits if we have to go directly to the agroforestry platform or sector within the community. This is something very important. We understood most of the ideas coming out from the sharing, the exchange, the insight of current practices in terms of agriculture activities. Yes, indeed, they are in the in the long value chain for cocoa. But we cannot forget coffee sector, whether we didn't put our more focusing in coffee sector, but we can even mention it that way. Among the panelists, we had some people, intervenants and actors and speakers coming from the same cocoa-oriented production background, starting from the production up to the consumption. That enables us to follow well, to be within the same frequency of a spirit. About the coffee, I can even add something. A little bit, let me say, specific, because my country, Burundi, is a coffee producer, and you know, at the beginning, we weren't authorized, you see, to practice this kind of what you mentioned in your conversations. And the practices now, today, have been certified. We are authorized to include the components of agroforestry in what we're doing today. And now, this is a big step we made until so far. I will come back to that later on, but we are still asking ourselves questions to know, do really our efforts, what we are doing in place in African continent, and those efforts are well distributed for Congolese, Congo Basin, whether for Amazon and in Brazilian forest, but what have been mentioned. Let me just speak briefly. We need an assessment whether the mapping presenting something clear for us, but we need to have one component of assessment. We need to promote this kind of agroforestry-oriented practices, while conservative. Yes, indeed, we can say there is a certain efforts being put in place to increase the sustainability aspect, whether in economic orientation or social orientation. We talk about traceability, the tracking systems, and they talk also about the pricing scale, and it is very beneficial. Certification, licensing, very important. But we need, as you know yourself, we need to increase the income. And that will be one of the factor of motivation to incentivize producers with the new, space to limit or to put an end to deforestation. That's it. We had many things, many issues. We faced many challenges, but I'll try to mention some of them. First of all, the pricing scale. The price for product is not really very strong. We have also the income, as I said, which is not compatible exactly comparing to what we're putting on the ground. So for that, you can see yourself most of the peasants and the agricultural, technician are not motivated. We need also to have a certification process where we can find out a market to supply our product. And in vis-a-vis to the injustice that we mentioned, there are some stakeholders participating actively in the preservation of the forest, but no remuneration, no appropriate wages if we have to compare it with those who are not doing anything. That also is one of the things we can raise. What are the lessons learned? What can we keep in mind? What to take with us? First of all, starting from the insights coming from this conversation, agroforestry is very good practice, wonderful, but is including also the silviculture and agriculture and even the pastoral activities. And we need to pay particular attention so that decision makers or any kind of actors participating to see how we can well coordinate all of those activities we are trying to put in place, even in different regions in the globe. We need to work together so that we can preserve the capitals. And let me say simply, the forestry assets and environmental assets need to be protected. If we do things in a very rational way, that will be a very good action. Also, the networking. We need to work hand in hand in networking so that we can increase the operational capacity, as we heard about what the Congolese minister was saying about the management of the forest that we have. There is a need to promote national programs focusing on forestation, and the reforestation will be more active. Thank you for your kind attention.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Minister. For question of times, we do not have many questions to collect from the public audience. But we need also to call upon your attention to be here, and then you can meet different panelists and talk to them in bilateral. Thank you for your kind attention. Yes, dear panelists, you are invited to come in front side for a photograph. Just will enable us